Hi and welcome to this Adobe Express lesson where we're going to create our own Viking burial. Now on your handout you'll have 3 profiles of different types of Viking people, and you're going to choose one of them and you're going to recreate a burial site for that particular type of Viking. So as you'll know, Vikings were buried with grave goods, and so these are objects that they used in their daily life which match their status in society. So of course, if they were a jarl or a royal, they'd be buried with usually in a ship, surrounded by lots of wealth and jewels and other things like that. Whereas if they were a Viking warrior, they'd usually be buried with their weapons and their armor, and maybe their horse as well. So for my one today, I've chosen a Viking warrior. My Viking warrior is female. There is evidence of female Viking warriors based upon burial sites that have been discovered by archaeologists. So to start with, I'm just going to press the plus in the top left and go to landscape because I want a nice horizontal page. I'm just going to add a photo as a background. So I'm just going to go to media. It's on photos. I'm just going to type in soil because I just want somewhere to bury my deceased Viking warrior. I think this one looks pretty good. So I'm just going to select it and I'm going to press down here. It says set as page background. And I think that looks pretty good. What I'm going to do now is add a skeleton. So this is going to be my deceased Viking warrior. So I'm just going to go to elements. I'm going to type in skeleton. And I'm going to choose one that I think is going to look good on this page. This one looks pretty good. There we go. I'm just going to increase the size and just make sure it's in the center here. Perfect. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some grave goods. So a Viking person, when they were buried, they'd be surrounded by objects that they used in their everyday life or that match the same level of social hierarchy or social status that that person held. So I've got a Viking warrior. So she's going to be a great swordsman, an incredible archer, and she'll also have some jewels and things that she's stolen on raids. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Wikimedia Commons, and this is where we're going to get our images from. Now, there was actually an exhibition in the Swedish History Museum called We Call Them the Vikings, where they collected a lot of Viking artifacts, and we're going to use these images to put onto our Viking gravesite. So I'm just going to type in We Call Them the Vikings into the search box in the top right and press enter. And as you can see now, we've got lots of different artifacts. Now these are all Viking artifacts that have been found usually at grave sites by archaeologists. And some of these can be from the UK, but a lot of them are from Sweden and Denmark, countries like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look through all these images and I'm going to select maybe 6 or 7 artifacts that I think a Viking warrior would have been buried with. So here we go. I'm going to start with this image here. I'm going to click on it and it tells me here that it's an iron sword. So I'm just going to copy this image. I'm going to go to my work and I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut Control V. And there we go. I've added the sword to my gravesite. So my Viking warrior, she was an excellent swordswoman. So what I'm going to do is I want to get rid of this background here. So if I select this image and I press this button on the left that says remove background, then it does a really good job of just isolating the sword, just the sword itself. Just going to rotate it a bit, decrease the size, try and get it to the right scale, maybe slightly bigger than that, and just place it on the gravesite. And now I'm going to do the same. I'm going to about 6 or 7 other artifacts that I think a female Viking warrior might have been buried with. Great, so I've added my grave goods for my Viking warrior, and she's got some arrowheads here because she was a master archer. This is a stirrup, which is one of those pieces that you use to get up onto a horse. She's got an iron sword. She's got a comb. The Vikings were known to be very hygienic and very often combed their hair. I've got a drinking horn. I've got a knife. And here I've got some horse bones because she was buried with her horse that she rode into battle. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to choose 4 of these artifacts and I'm going to go into a bit of detail about why I chose them. But before I do, I'm just going to make the background slightly adjusted just to make those artifacts stand out a bit better. So if I select the background, I'm just going to go to adjustments and I'm just going to bring the brightness of the background down slightly. And it'll just help those artifacts or those grave goods stand out a bit better. So what I'm going to do is I want to present my information. First, actually, I'm going to label this grave site. So I'm just going to go to elements. I'm just going to type in label tag and see what comes up. I want it to kind of look like a label that you might get on an artifact in a museum. I think this one looks pretty good. So I'm just going to rotate it around. I'm just going to put it over in this side here. And I'm going to add some text. So if I go to text, I'm going to go to add your text. And this is a female Viking warrior. Just going to reduce the size of the text and just click away from it so that I can now drag it. And I'm just going to rotate it around so it looks like it's on the label. Now, I kind of want it so it looks like it's handwritten, to have that sort of old museum feel. So if I select the text, I'm going to go to font here. And I'm just going to type in handwriting and see what comes up. This one looks good. Adobe handwriting. Perfect. And what I might just do, if I go to elements, I'm just going to add some string. This looks good. Just going to rotate that string around. I don't need all of it, so I might just crop it using this little bar. And I might just attach it. There we go. Maybe just get those 2 items and just have it coming off the skeleton there. Okay. Great. So now what I want to do is I'm going to go into a bit more detail about 4 of the artifacts, and I'm going to present this on some paper on the sides of my work. So I'm going to go to elements again. I'm going to search for, I'm going to go for torn paper, because I think this again will give me that sort of old time feel that goes with this sort of archaeology project. I think this one looks pretty good. I'm just going to increase the size and just put it on one side of my work here. There we go. That's looking pretty good. And I'm just going to click it and duplicate it by pressing the duplicate button up here. And I'm going to drag one on the other side, maybe like this. Great. I think that's looking pretty good. I might just adjust them down, just increase the size slightly. There we go. There we go. I think that's looking a lot neater. I might just add an effect or an adjustment to these bits of paper. They are a bit bright. Maybe if I go to effects, go to tint, that looks okay. Grayscale is quite nice. You can play around until you get one that you like. You could just, instead of effects, you could go to adjustments instead. Maybe increase the warmth slightly. That's pretty good. Warmth on 34. I'm going to do the same on the other side. So warmth was 34. Great. I think that's looking pretty good now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of 4 of my artifacts and then increase the size of them just so we can get a bit of a closer look at them. So I'm going to start with my arrowheads. So I'm just going to click on the arrowheads and I'm going to press on duplicate. And here we go. But you'll notice if I drag it across there, it's not on the top layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my layers on the right hand side. This one with the black around it is the layer that's currently selected. And I'm going to drag it to the top layer. So now I can actually position it on the paper over here. And I'm going to do the same for 3 more of my artifacts or my grave goods. Great. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write a couple of sentences, maybe a sentence about each one, and kind of what it tells me about the person who's buried in this burial site. So I'm going to go to text, add your text. This text is probably a bit harder to read for actual sentences, so I'm probably going to change the font. Just going to look through some fonts. I think this one's pretty nice. Gaudi Book Letter 1911. This is a good old school looking font. I'm just going to select the text. I'm going to go to alignment over here, and I'm actually going to align this left. All right, so there you go. I've just had a play around with it. I've added some of those label tags onto each of my items, and I've added a sentence about each artifact and what it shows us about the person who's buried here, this female warrior. So I've said that the arrowheads showed that she was a skilled archer. The bone comb shows that she was a fierce warrior, but was also concerned with hygiene and appearance, as many Vikings were. The iron sword shows she was a master swordswoman and always carried a sword or knife. And my female Viking warrior was also a confident horse rider who was buried with her trusty steed. So I've got some horse bones there that I've found from that Wikimedia Commons page. But I've also added a horse skull here. I just went to elements and searched for horse skeleton and that came up. So I've just added that in as well as a little extra. So there you go. That's my burial of my female Viking warrior. Now I'm done. I can just press download in the top right. And I can just download a PNG. I could download a PDF if I want, but I'm just going to get a PNG. So I'm going to press download. So that's downloaded it to my computer. I can press share, publish to web. I can give my work a title. And I can press publish link. And you can see at the bottom it says that it's publishing my design. And once that's done, it will give me a link which I could share in Google Classroom, Microsoft Teams, or share it with whoever I like. So there you go. There's my female Viking warrior burial site. It's your chance to have a go at making your own one. Choose one of the types of people from your handout and make your own Viking burial site.